Sure thing. Hi, Dave. Wondered about hoops first up, not captaining for this tour. Is that just for this tour? Do you expect him to play? Give us a bit of an update on him, please.
Yeah, look, it's great news from our perspective. He's really excited about travelling and playing. He's done a lot of work over the last wee while, and been training with our Sydney-based boys for the last couple of weeks. And but we were keen for him just to come in and focus on himself. And what you know with a player like that, he'll lead from outside the leadership group. But yeah, we just want him focusing on himself at the moment.
Is he done as the captain, Dave?
Sorry?
Is he done as Wallabies captain?
No, I wouldn't say that. Obviously, Slips has taken over that role in the last few tests, and he'll continue to do so. He's a good man, Slips, got a huge amount of respect within the group, and like I said, Hoops' job is just come in and play well, and what we know that he'll lead from example, but you know he'll contribute from outside of that leadership group, and that's really important to us. You know, when we've had guys like Quade Cooper in the group, the quality of people outside of a leadership group is very influential, and so I'm sure he'll contribute massively anyway.
Is it something he specifically asked for, the captaincy?
Not to be captain?
Yeah.
No, it's something that we discussed a while back, and that when he come back in, a chance to focus on him and just come in and play good footy. And so, yeah, so we'll assess things as they go, but you know, we're happy with the contribution Slips is making, and like I said, Hoops will chip in and help out where required.
Dave, did Michael want to be captain? Like, was it, you know, did he reluctantly agree to that, or was he 100% positive towards that idea?
Yeah, no, he was very supportive of it.
Dave, a couple of other selections. Mark Nawangani-Dewasi back in the squad. Was it something from the Australia A tour that really impressed and stood out regarding that? Because he's clearly edged a couple of big name players.
Yeah, I thought he was excellent. You know, over in Japan. His ability, he's got an excellent skill set. He's a big man. His ability to beat people. You know, his creative pass, his high ball, and even chasing kicks. He was all over the park. You know, he's looking for work. He's in a lot of touches, having a real impact on the game. So exciting for him. I think he's really grown in the last 12 months. We brought him into camp just to give us a bit more cover when he came back for the sevens, and so nice to officially name him in our squad.
And someone like a Sully and a Kirtley, can you explain some of the reasoning behind those two not being selected?
Yeah, look, I think with Sully, he had some nice touches over there. But if we looked at the players that had the biggest impact and played the best on that A tour, you know, Tom Banks, Jock Campbell, and Mark, they were three standouts. So, yeah, in the end, they played better than Sully.
And Kirtley, sorry?
Yeah, like KB was a tough call in the end. We just want to make sure that you know, his body's right back to where it needs to be. He's close he certainly dropped a lot of kilos. He's probably maybe 1 or 2 still to go. No, we just think he needs to be absolutely sharp. He's just had a baby boy. And so, yeah, ultimately we want him to have a really good off-season, have a big super rugby tournament, and then push for a place from there. But it'd be good for him to get some decent footy under his belt next year.
Dave, only 2 Giteau Law picks, or overseas-based players. What does, I guess, that say? What's the thinking there? And was there a temptation to add another, or did you just feel like you were covered sufficiently elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, we've got obviously most of the Japanese-based guys are unavailable at this time of year. So that's Marika, Rory, with Samu and Quade both being injured anyway. And so, yeah, we've got Will coming in, which is great. And, we're not necessarily looking to fill all those holes. We've looked carefully at a World Cup. The squad we might have there is a number of guys who potentially would go to a World Cup aren't coming, maybe as many as 12. So we're not just looking to fill those holes. It was trying to bring in guys who we think could have genuine chance of going into a World Cup.
There was a bit of prelude to the Australia A Tour about Ben Donaldson and Tane and, one spot on the line kind of thing, a bit of a showdown. Like, could you talk about how that played out in your eyes and what led you to make the decision you've made?
Yeah, both good boys, and both played well over in Japan. We just think it's Dono edged out Tane in regard to his ability to play. He's quick. He's got a smart kicking game. I reckon he controls things really well. They play a lot off 9. The A's did, as do the Waratahs. But we had Dono in camp for about 4 weeks. He really impressed us in that period too, and we wanted to see him boss things around a little bit more, and we're looking forward to taking him away as a part of the group and accelerate that development.
Dave, how did you weigh up 1 year out from the World Cup, 10 tests away, I think? How do you weigh up kind of giving opportunities, seeing a little bit that you might not have seen from guys like a Jock Campbell, for instance, but also knowing that winning is important and momentum too?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a balance on this tour. We, for a start, we want to win every test. It's also been a long year, and on the back of a long super season for some of these boys, and then international footy. We need to share the workload as well. And you're right. There's a number of guys who we want to find out by the end of this tour, are they genuine World Cup contenders? So hence the reason we've got a handful of uncapped guys who are likely to play on tour.
Dave, can I ask you just about the status of some of the injured players? Pone obviously did his hamstring after playing some strong minutes in Osaka. Is he potentially going to be fit halfway through the tour to be a possible emergency? That's one question, I guess. And Darcy Swain's status.
Yeah, so Pone, he's getting scanned tomorrow, but it looks serious enough that he wouldn't tour. And Darcy obviously still got a couple of games from a suspension point of view to go through. So he could be an option as a replacement should we get an injury from the Italian game onwards.
Right. Okay. So is your preference to not pick him when he was suspended? Is that sort of the practice?
Yeah, well, we certainly could take him and we rate him, but Will's only available for the Reg 9 games, which means he won't play against Scotland. So we're already a little bit thin there, and to take another player who can't play in the first couple of tests would put us under a bit of heat. So, so look, there's obviously consequences for his actions, and he's got a chance to try and put on some size, which has been a real focus over the past 12 months.
I guess looking at some of the progress of Nick Frost in the 8 games as well as during the tests, having more opportunities, there's a chance he's even overtaken Darcy in some ways, just with what he provides.
Yeah, like he's a hell of an athlete, Frosty, and we've been asked him to develop the physicality of his game, and he was very good over in Japan. So we brought him back a week early because he'll definitely play a part in the 5 tests we're going to play over there.
And just clarifying, Will, unavailable Scotland game, is the final game against Wales, is that outside Reg 9 time?
Yeah, yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Dave, just on Will, last year you predominantly used him off the bench. Do you think that you'll throw him out there earlier or potentially start, or because of the physical differences and European and everything else like that, is it really hard to start him?
No, we could definitely start him and probably would. Obviously, the first test is against Scotland, and we'll assess how the second rowers go in that game. But he's starting week in, week out for La Rochelle. And what we know, he's a massive man who has a big impact. And so, he's been working hard on his conditioning and knowing that the intensity lifts at international level. And but he's probably not an 80-minute player for us, so more likely to start.
And do you feel like he could be? He's someone that Australian rugby fans for 5, 6, 7 years, ever since he started, there's always been a lot of excitement about him. But do you genuinely feel like he could be a World Cup point of difference? Because people like Stuart Barnes from the Times, former player, obviously, he's thought that he could be an absolute world beater for the Wallabies.
Yeah, no, we agree. He's had a massive impact at La Rochelle, and when they won the European Cup last year, it was on the back of Will playing the house down. He's a big man who bullies other big men, and 140 odd kilos behind your tight head props, handy at scrum time. So he's very good around set piece, defensive maul, and so look, we're really excited to get him in. It was good to have him in the mix last year and gave us a good understanding of how desperate he is to wear the Wallaby jersey again. So, we look forward to catching up with him in France.
On the subject, sorry, Jimmy, of big men, Dave, discipline, obviously a recurrent theme with you guys. To talk a lot about wanting to be better and haven't really produced much in that regard. What are your thoughts on that issue for this squad?
Look, we've put a lot of time into that very topic over the last 3 weeks, going back and reflected on every game, every penalty, where, when, who, to try and get some a clear understanding of what we can change. And certainly offsides would be mooted, and that's something that we can manage. At scrum time, sometimes you get penalised and maybe you've been hard done by. You got to take that on the chin, but we've got to take responsibility for stuff that we can control. And what the stats will tell us is that we reduce the penalties by about 4, and you go to about second best in the world. So that's achievable. But we're going to put a massive focus on that, because the concern is, the impression it has with referees that they're thinking that we're offending a lot, especially when we're down our end. So we've got to paint a better picture there, and but we're going to put an emphasis on tour, definitely.
It takes a lot to change those perceptions, doesn't it? Once they're kind of entrenched around a team, do you almost have to? I feel like it's a tough balance, because abrasiveness is a big part of this team's DNA. But to change that impression on the field, it's a fine line for you to walk, for the players to walk in bringing the aggression, but showing a better picture when perceptions are already running against you.
Yeah, but I think we still want to be abrasive, and you get in more trouble when you're not dominating collisions. So tackle ends up on the wrong side of the ruck, doesn't roll away. The defensive line moves a metre or so back from a passive tackle. So dominating collisions will actually be an important part of our discipline. But like I say, we've got to focus on what we can control, and hopefully refs are coming into each game with a clean slate, and we've got to show that we've got the right discipline at the right times.
Just on a Reg 9 perspective, Bernard Foley, and I guess maybe to a lesser extent Tom Banks, who's still considered under contract with Rugby Australia. Does that affect their availability, or so how's that work with the Japanese clubs?
No, Tom's technically contracted to us till end of November. And Bernard Kubota have been fantastic supporting him coming on tour, but he won't be there for the final round, which is the Wales game. He'll head back to get into preparation, and their competition kicks off in December.
I guess when you consider last year's tour, 0 from 3 in terms of wins, how big is it just to get off to a strong start against Scotland in your eyes? Yeah,
it's definitely important because we want to bounce back from the last All Black game, and and it's important for a lot of reasons. We want to create momentum. We want to create competition for places. We want to, I guess, lay a lot of foundations that are going to be important for next year, and the players that are coming on tour, they get the first opportunity to get their name penciled in for 2023. So that's an important tour for a lot of reasons.
Dave, there's a bit said about win-loss records and your kind of personal record as Wallabies coach in comparison to others. Do you put any stock in that at all? Is it something that you kind of reflect on? And as a follow-up to that, have you had any discussions at all with Rugby Australia about tenure through to the World Cup? Any recent kind of guarantees, or is it just where it's always been?
Look, I think at this level, there's pressure on everyone, and what's happening a lot in, I guess, international rugby now, it's so tight, and as we saw in the Rugby Championship, we're going into the round 5, and I think everyone's 1 and 2 lost 2 type of thing. So we've just got to keep working hard and try and get on the right side of a ledger. Look, it's not lost on me that we've had results that we should have won and we haven't won, and so in the end that falls on me. And if to answer your last one, no, I haven't had any discussions that around beyond next year, and the only discussions I had, which were quite a while back, was obviously I'm heading into the World Cup, and that's the plan.
Thank you.
Are you happy to be judged, Dave, on World Cup success? Or would you seek a renewal before that?
I think it's a challenge. That's for all coaches around the world. You can't sit on your hands and wait till November next year to decide what you're going to do the following season. So it'll get to a stage where very early next year I'll have to make a decision as to what I'm doing beyond 23.
Dave, could just more broadly around international coaching, do you think that the task has been what you expected? Is there other challenges that you didn't necessarily foresee when you took on the Australian coaching role? And how different is it to anything you've experienced in terms of all the provincial coaching you've done?
Well, I mean, the difference really is, you get your team 2 weeks before your first test. So the advantage of club footy is you have 2 or 3 months of preparation leading in, and you've got those players all the way through. So that's definitely different. But we still get the players for 5 months, and so look, we'll play games where we reckon we've made some really good shifts. Then we don't back that up the following week. So that's a big focus for us, our consistency, and we're certainly the advantage of playing 5 tests as opposed to 3. We just got to get as much footy into some of these young men as possible. And 5 tests now, 5 more leading into World Cups, 10, and that'll take some of our boys into sort of around about 30 tests by the time we kick off the World Cup. We reckon that's going to be really important.
Last couple, please, guys.
Dave, you obviously have had a pretty horrid run this year with injuries, and I think you and your staff have sort of come out and said, put your hand up and said you got that wrong from focusing more on a athletic development or preparation point of view and less on rugby. So how's prep going to change with that in mind and acknowledging that?
I think there were 2 or 3 injuries that would be accurate from that sort of focus. And then there's been a hell of a lot of collision and bad luck. So we've looked at every injury. What could we have done different that would have changed circumstance? And a couple of those, say Andrew Callaway, for example, a long trip to Perth, a long trip back. We trained on a sort of soft ground on the Tuesday, and the reflection is, based on all the long travel we've done, should we have pushed that back till the following day before we worked them harder? So I think that's really important. I've already mentioned around the penalty stuff. We've got to look at everything we're doing to ensure that we're giving ourselves the best opportunity to be successful, and having our best players on the field is a massive part of that. So we're obviously going to be minus a number of boys for this tour, but we're still taking away a really exciting squad, and a big chunk of these guys will go to the World Cup.
Dave, I know Harry Wilson there. I guess Langy Gleeson was a real discovery through the A-team program in Fiji and in Japan. Could you talk us through that decision there? And also, I guess, no James O'Connor, hard to see a way back with you moving on number 10 there. We'll start with Harry. Such a good man. But you're right. Lungy has been excellent. We had him in camp for the last few weeks. From a training perspective, he really impressed us. He's athletic. He's got great feet. He's powerful. So he gets you go forward in attack and defence, and that's been hard to ignore. And so he edges out Harry. And James obviously got an injury in the club final. And like you say, we've had a couple other guys come in who played pretty well. We want to make sure that we've got some good young 10s coming through. So Noah and Dono get the nod for this tour as well. And James's focus has got to be get the body right, have a big super season, and put pressure on us from that point of view. Thank you.
Just on Harry, Dave, was there consideration to send him to Japan with Australia, just given I know he'd been involved in all of the squads this year, but he'd only played, 2 tests, I think? And then, you sent someone like Nick Frost, for instance, who was heavily involved in the squads, but sent him over there for minutes and games. Was there consideration of that for Harry?
Yeah, there was. We sort of changed it when he started the final test against the All Blacks. The visa issue getting into Japan at that stage wasn't straightforward. So if we hadn't got visas a couple of weeks out, no one was travelling. Hence the reason we could bring guys home. But so we added a couple extra in, but we couldn't send anyone over midstream. So yeah, there might be an opportunity for Harry to go to Japan with the Reds.